All right, man, peace. So, brothers, if there's ever been an athlete who embodied, who accentuated, who exemplifies the slogan of, if I can do it, anybody can do it, it would be Tyrone Muggsy Bogues, the 5'3" standout point guard for the Charlotte Hornets throughout the late 80s into the early to mid 90s. He was somebody who basically transcended the sport for a very short period of time because, as we all know, the NBA is a tall man's game for the most part. And the shorter you are, the more intangibles and the more skills you have to bring to the table, which is what makes Tyrone Muggsy Bogues even more of an oddity, because he was not a good shooter. At 5'3", he couldn't shoot, but he was still the starting point guard for the Charlotte Hornets for a very long period of time. Eventually, he was ran out of the NBA because he got older, but I think that the tipping point for his end in the NBA was the Charlotte Hornets playoff series against the Chicago Bulls during Michael Jordan's return in 1995. There were some very pivotal moments in that series where the Bulls decided in their defensive schematics that they were going to leave Muggsy Bogues wide open, and he could not make any jump shots whatsoever. And there were crucial portions in each game where Michael Jordan would step away from Tyrone Muggsy Bogues and he would say, "Shoot the ball, you fucking midget." He'd say, "Shoot the ball, you fucking midget." And that messed up Muggsy Bogues' mind for a long period of time. Eventually, it ran him out of the NBA because he just couldn't do it anymore. He couldn't shoot, and then he lost a lot of his speed and quickness. And after those crucial moments against the Chicago Bulls, he lost a lot of his swag, a lot of his confidence. And so much of success is based on your self-belief, what we call today swag or self-confidence. So anyway, he sat down with Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, and he made some, I won't call them inflammatory comments about today's NBA, but some very transparent comments. He was very honest about how he feels about many of today's players. He pretty much is going to repeat some of the sentiments that I've touched on. And of course, I'm going to expound on that as this video goes along. So anyway, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Welcome back to Bank of America Stadium here in Charlotte. First take on the road for NBA All-Star Weekend. Our next guest, one of the most popular players in Hornets history, the all-time franchise leader in assists and steals, Muggsy Bogues, everybody. Give it up.
Muggsy Bogues, I believe, and one of you brothers can correct me if I'm wrong, Muggsy Bogues was a high school teammate of the late, great Reggie Lewis's on, I believe they went to Dunbar High School in Baltimore. But if I'm wrong about that, one of you brothers can correct me. I think they were teammates in high school. Reggie Lewis, for those of you brothers who never saw him play, was on the fast track. I won't say the fast track, but he was on a career arc of becoming a Hall of Fame shooting guard. He was about 6'7". He and Jordan would go to war. Reggie Lewis and Michael Jordan had many little battles bordering on wars in their games between the Celtics and the Bulls from the late 80s into the early 90s. And I believe that he died from a heart attack.
My hometown.
Yes, thank you for having us. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start with Kemba Walker. I'm a huge UConn fan, my alma mater, so I've been watching him since college, and I feel like he's a bit underrated.
No, Kemba Walker is not underrated. He's properly rated. In order for him to be mentioned amongst the Steph Currys and the Russell Westbrooks and the Damian Lillards, he has to make serious playoff runs, and he has not made those runs. So we can't call him underrated. What Kemba is very explosive, but not underrated. When we think of the top point guards in the NBA, Kyrie Irving, Steph Curry, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, Damian Lillard, they've all been to at least the second round in the playoffs. Kemba Walker has yet to do that. Even John Wall has been to the playoffs more than Kemba Walker.
If you were going to compare him to the other point guards in the league, who would you take ahead of him?
Who would I take ahead of Kemba? Of course, I have Stephen Curry and probably maybe Kyrie Irving. But other than that, I mean, Kemba has it all. He really does.
I would take Lillard over him as well. And a fully healthy Chris Paul, I would take over Kemba as well. I like Kemba. It's just that his style of play is not conducive to leading a team to a lot of wins. Right now, he's playing a very Allen Iverson type of basketball.
He brings it every night. For a franchise of this magnitude, the way he go out there and perform night in and night out is unbelievable at his size. I mean, it's remarkable.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up because Michael Jordan has to keep this man. Wouldn't you say that?
Absolutely.
Well, Michael has to keep him if he wants to keep his gate attraction. But if he's serious about winning, he's probably going to have to consider letting Kemba go.
Can't lose this man. But the flip side to it is that unlike other franchises, because of the money that's generated in a market like this size or what have you, he's going to pitch Charlotte, unlike the Lakers would be pitched, or not like the Knicks would be pitched or whatever. If you're Michael Jordan, what do you do when it comes to Kemba Walker, particularly since you know, as great as he is, you obviously need a hell of a lot more to win than just him?
Absolutely. I mean, you got to really go back to the drawing board and understand what your roster look like and what you possibly need and who you possibly can get rid of, who can move. You got some probably some expiring contracts coming up, and you got some contracts a little lucrative right now. So they got to kind of mix.
Charlotte has some very bad contracts, though. They have some very bad contracts. They're in a precarious situation, but I will say this. Kupchak is a good GM. I think that it will take probably about 3 or 4 years to see this ship start to change direction and change course. So maybe they sign Kemba for another 4 years and see if Kupchak can work his magic, or they let Kemba go and try to build their team through the draft.
Some better decision in terms of who they're going to surround Kemba with. You cannot afford to lose Kemba Walker at this stage right now.
I want to talk about you for a second, Muggsy, because like
And also keep in mind that despite the story that I recited pertaining to Michael Jordan and Muggsy Bogues, they are still very good friends to this day. Remember, Muggsy Bogues made an appearance in the Michael Jordan film Space Jam. So I'm pretty sure that Muggsy is acting as an advisor for Michael Jordan.
I used to see like Tiger Woods on the cover of the magazine, greatest athlete in the world, and I would think, oh, hold on a second. Let's take the NBA for a second. Like, I want people to understand the athletic ability of this man first. If you took the percentage of people 6 feet tall in the world who play in the NBA, it's so small, it's like 1 out of millions. If you're 6 feet tall, you got a 1 out of millions chances of playing in the NBA. If you took a 6'6" guy, still very, very unlikely. Even 7-footers in the world, it's like, 10 or 15% chance you got it. You're 7 foot tall. If you're 5'3", you're 1 out of 7 billion. There's never been a guy your size who did it like that.
Absolutely.
Do you ever feel like when you were playing, like, do people understand that in a league that selects out for height, I'm getting real minutes on a playoff team, I'm dropping double-digit points a night? Did you ever think, like, pound for pound, I'm kind of the best athlete on earth? What did you ever, like, how did you view yourself?
Well, I was just in the moment. I would just want to be just like everybody else, playing the game, and just want to be accepted like everybody else. I didn't really think about trying to be the best. I just wanted to be included. Because, a guy my size, and, back then, it was all about big guards. Trying to break that barrier, we really had to really showcase our talent. We have different types of point guards that were small. We had Michael Adams, we had Spud Webb, and we had myself. We all had...
Michael Adams was another dude about 5'7", who about once or twice a year would score 50, 55 points on somebody.
Different styles. We all impacted the game a totally different way.
When you see Isaiah Thomas now, a couple of years ago, really getting it, do you feel a certain kind of pride, like the little man kinship? Like, look at him do that 25 points a night.
Absolutely. Him and Nate Robinson, when they was basically doing it, and when we had Earl Borkin at the time. I mean, people don't realize when I was playing, it was a little difficult. It was more physical. We can't have...
Why'd you say a lot difficult? We all know it's soft as cottonelle tissue today.
Because we had the big guys camped in the middle of that lane.
Thank you, sir. I say this over and over again. A lot of people do not understand. Back in the 90s, even in the 80s, but especially in the 90s, most of your top point guards, they could not drive the lane like they can today. With the stretch 4 and even the stretch 5, it opens up the paint so that all Steph Curry or Damian Lillard have to do is beat their man and they're at the cup.
We couldn't penetrate as much as much you can today, but allow the guys to be a little more freedom, a lot more move, a lot around the court. That's why I see a lot more scoring.
Stay with me, because I got a couple of questions to throw in your direction. First of all, when I watched you, one of the things that you're going to smile when I say this. There was a guy in college at the University of Georgetown named Gene Smith, for example. Everybody was like, oh my God, this brother put you on lockdown. You came into the NBA, and it got to a point where brothers were scared to dribble the ball up the court against you.
Absolutely. Steve Smith, one of the analysts on NBA TV, is even on record as saying that the reason why he switched from point guard to small forward, shooting guard / small forward, is because Muggsy Bogues defended him for 94 feet, and he was so scared of Muggsy stealing the basketball from him. And throughout the game, Muggsy Bogues probably stripped him 5 or 6 times, and he said to himself, you know what? I think I'm going to play off the ball. People forget, Steve Smith came into the NBA in 1991 being billed as the next Magic Johnson. He went to Michigan State. He came into the league. He was drafted by Miami. And in his rookie season, they made the playoffs. They had a 3-game series against the Bulls. They got swept. Jordan played with them the whole series. He scored like 46 points in the first game, 30-some in the second game. Third game, he scored 56 points. And by the next season, by the middle of the next season, I believe it was, Steve Smith got traded to the Atlanta Hawks.
Because obviously, because of your size, you had to neutralize guys off the dribble. Do you see anybody in today's game?
Even Penny Hardaway also said that Muggsy Bogues gave him a lot of trouble when he tried to bring the basketball up the floor.
That can play defense close to what cats like yourself play?
No, and that's one of the things I've been alluding to.
Bledsoe?
Well, it's a little different. You know, I picked you up 94 feet.
That's right.
And I challenge the dribble every time you put the ball on the floor, even if I'm in front of you or if I'm in back of you. Right. And people didn't understand that. But today's game, the rules have changed. You can't hand check anymore. You know, you pretty much got to have your hands off. So guys are trying to contain guys as much as possibly can. But you got to remember, these are the best players in the world. So hopefully we can get a little more competitive defense going on.
But doesn't it bother you that the NBA, I don't blame an NBA player today that tries to play defense. If you ain't a great offensive player, you're at a decided disadvantage because A, you got to give the ball to the cats who are great because that's what systems demand, which means you're trying to make a name for yourself defensively, but the rules that have been implemented strongly handicap anybody trying to play defense.
What that means, Stephen A. Smith, is that you have to build up a reputation as a great defensive player and also be potent on the offensive end so that the referees know that they have to allow you to get away with certain things because it's in their best interest and it's also in the NBA's best interest to allow you to stay in the game. So therefore, a Kawhi Leonard, a Paul George, these are your top perimeter defenders in the NBA. Why is that? Because they also are stars in the league. So refs are less likely to call them for fouls when they get very physical defensively. Andre Iguodala is another player who gets a lot of leeway from the refs defensively, but he's been in the league for almost 15 years. Draymond Green, to a degree, they let him get away with certain things. But you're going to have to build up a reputation over the course of a long period of time for the refs to allow you to defend. You can't just be a defensive specialist anymore in the NBA, coming off the bench and try to lock somebody down. They're going to blow the whistle on your ass.
What's your comment to that?
Well, and that's why I hope that referees or the committee can really go back to really look at what actually is successful, how guys really compete in this league. Because defensively, that's where it starts. If you can't allow the guys to have more of aggressive defensive stance and you giving more leeway to the offensive player, then you're always going to see the offensive player scoring and having more of an advantage at that regard.
Hopefully, the NBA will find a happy medium because right now, they're just allowing way too much offensively. Hopefully they will allow a little bit more physicality from the defenders so that we can see the scores maybe get into that 105 to 107 range. Right now, it's too many 130-point games. Way too many.
In all sports, though, the more offense you get, the more the fans like it. Like, to me, it's too much offense to me. Like
too much. I agree.
Like, too much, it's shooting threes, paint threes, paint threes. It's less interesting and less dramatic, I think.
Well, Max Kellerman, you're one of those analytics geeks who talks about how it's so much more efficient and proficient for players to play that way. So you have to pick a side. Is it that you want players to play that way, or do you think that it's unappealing to the eye? Because I agree with you. I think that all of that just take threes and layups is ugly. And that's why you see fans do not like James Harden, because that's how he plays. Bring back the nuance. Bring back the mid-range. Bring back the post-up. And we'll find, more diversity, more multifaceted offensive players so that, they can just be, a greater variety of what we watch on television. Now, everything is just people want to copy Golden State or Houston and just jack up a bunch of threes. It's not appealing.
Than in the 90s when people seem to like it less, but it's more popular than ever. Why would they ever go back to that, Muggsy? They're not going to.
Well, the scoring is definitely entertaining, but the game of itself is not as substantive as it was.
Who do you see in the league today? You're like, that dude would have gotten his in my day. In that league.
Well, you mean LeBron could play in any era. Right. You can see a guy like that with that body structure and so forth, and as well as a Westbrook, I would think. But again.
Once again, I would have loved to have seen Russell Westbrook go up against Gary Payton. That would have been the greatest matchup ever.
Again, you got so many talented players today, and I always say back in our era, we had so many superstars. You know, we got a lot of stars today, very few superstars.
I agree, sir. I've said that many times. There are only 4 superstars in the NBA today, in my view, and that's LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry, Kawhi Leonard. A lot of these other guys are not superstars. They're stars. To be a superstar means not only can you dominate the game physically, but you can also dominate it mentally. And I believe that that is what Muggsy Bogues is referring to. Back in his era, there were a lot more alphas. A lot more alphas. There are just as many stars today, but there are not as many alphas, meaning players who could lead their team and also dominate the game. Back in his era, you had Magic Johnson, you had Larry Bird, you had Michael Jordan, you had Hakeem, you had Charles Barkley, you had Dominique Wilkins, you had Isaiah Thomas. I mean, you had a lot of guys who were both the best player on the team and the leader. Nobody challenged them when it came to their role as a leader. Today, you have certain players that are great, but are they also the leaders of the team? Can they take it up another notch in the playoffs, in the championship round? Who knows? But I believe that is what he's getting at.
You saying that there are people being called superstars that ain't superstars, they stars?
Well, I don't know who's been called superstars.
I'm not saying who. I'm not saying who. I'm not asking you to say who. I'm saying just based on that premise, people that we might label superstars, you saying no, they stars.
Probably.
How about that? Yes, I'm just saying. I just need clarification.
Absolutely.
No, me,
yes.
Come on,
and we're going to keep it real.
That's right.
I mean, that's the way the game is. You got to call it where it is. And you got a lot of talented players that's playing this game today. Very exceptional. But again, the way night in and night out, some of the guys can't really carry franchises on a day-to-day basis.
Ding. Exactly. That's my point. You have a lot of very talented players today, but what Muggsy is saying is they're not leaders. They cannot carry the franchise, quote unquote.
No question. Muggsy, it's a pleasure and really looking forward to your documentary, Muggsy Bogues' Remarkable Life and How He Became Charlotte's Favorite Son. That's this Sunday on E60, 9 a.m. Eastern on ESPN. Make sure to check that out. Thank you so much for being here. When we come back...
But anyway, that's basically it on that. Good for Muggsy Bogues for telling the truth. And I believe that there are some reasons for why there's a great disparity between this era and the previous era when it comes to leadership. But that's a whole other video, because we know that today it's been basically a 25-year difference in the expansion of the quote-unquote black matriarchy in the so-called black community. But anyway, peace.